megahertz type of test. It wasn't anything he looked into from a scientific standpoint. So, in the middle of Manchester, John decided that, well, I'm going to see if this thing works. So it was about 11 o'clock, and he lives near the fairgrounds in Manchester, and he had a 357. It was something like Dirty Harry would have. So he said, I'm going to turn my scanner on and go outside. So he left the scanner on in the house and went outside, and it was fire pit. It wasn't burning at the time, but let loose and wham, 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 3 shots in quick succession. And then he said he was quite startled because he said a revolver, the flames shot out in a fan from the sides, as well as 6 feet out the muzzle. So he was quite startled at the same time he was shooting this, so then he runs into the house. And then he's listening for a short time, and then shots fired, Manchester, from Washtenaw County. So then it's John, if you've ever known John, and he's telling a story, and he's kind of saying he maybe shouldn't have done something. He gets this look and kind of goes, I did something. So needless to say, John turned out all his lights and was all panicked. And the Washtenaw County cars were coming up and down, scanning the fairgrounds and John's place and every other house along there. And John, by that point, is quite frightened, and he's got the classic blinds pulled down and peak, and he's looking out and all the lights are off. Then he thinks, then the paranoia set in is, I wonder if they can hear themselves on my scanner. So he runs over and quick turns it on, and he might have even pulled the batteries on the thing. But he's just watching for a long time sitting on the floor, and he sweat that one out. But that's a typical situation that John's version of testing something like a scanner would be. Another excursion, we used to go to the Mariposa Folk Festival in Toronto, and we were teenagers, early 20s, so if you go to Canada, you can drink legally there, and we'd go to this festival, and we would load up. In Canada, you have to go to these beer outlets and buy your beer. They don't just sell it at stores, so we would go in and buy our doors and stock up on stuff, and they have all these bottles, and we'd look at them, and we weren't looking at the quality or anything. We're going like, well, this one's 4.2%. This one's 5. For doors, it's 6.2. We better get 2 of those. So we'd go to the festival, and we had one of those big coolers with a handle on either side, and we stuffed it full and had enough room for maybe a thing of mustard and some ham and things you don't really need, and we put those in the cooler too. So after the day was over, we're walking back, and this thing is pretty light, but they recycled their bottles in Canada, and they don't just crush them up and recycle them, they use them, and all the bottles had wear marks where they would spin against each other, and they were real thick, heavy glass. And so we had a cooler full of empties, and the mustard and things that you don't need in a cooler and all that stuff. So we're walking back to the Neil Wysick Hotel, and John and this guy, Dave Green, decide that they're going to play a little game with the cooler. So they start swinging it, and they were swinging it like this. I think John's on this side and Dave's on the other, So they're going like this with the cooler, and we're all walking along. And so he goes up, up like this, stop and down, and then he and Dave get it and goes, all right, and around, and they go around with the cooler like this. And they do that a number of times with the cooler. Oh, that's pretty cool. We're doing the spin. So John's doing the up, up, down, around, and Dave's doing his bit. Well, Dave and John got their wires crossed. I think Dave was going on around, and John was going down. Well, when you hold a cooler, you're like this. So the bottom of the cooler is a good 8 feet in the air by that point. So if you've ever been in a group of people and you know things are going to happen, I was walking probably 50 feet ahead. I might have been with Paige or Julia. And we heard, the signals, and I looked back, well, the cooler was frozen in midair like this, and the lid drops open. And down comes a bunch of green and brown glass and crashed onto the sidewalk. And we were just happening to be walking by a fancy hotel with the guards out front, or the men with, and it was an old building close to the street, so it was just a short curved driveway where people would pull up and they would take their vehicle. Well, they're standing out there, and this happened right in front of the place. So we're all wide-eyed and kind of going, we gotta get the hell out of here. So we're all running up, and we see this pile, huge pile of broken glass and whatnot in there. And so we're all ready to scamper, and Dave and John have the cooler, and John says, wait, we can't go. And if you've ever drank beer and heard the phrase of a dead soldier is an empty beer, John's like, there's still some good beers in there unopened. So we're all panicked that the guards are coming over, and Dave and John are over there trying to assemble the cooler, and John's grabbing it, and he puts about half a dozen of these things in the cooler, and then we skated on out of there. But it was like, you can almost hear the helicopters overhead, like a Vietnam thing, John saving these soldiers out of the broken glass. And we're all like, we gotta go. And then we realized afterwards, and John's kind of calmly saying, well, we're back at the hotel, and you each got a beer to drink now. So that's something that, I think you wouldn't have done that if Dave Green was there, obviously. But also John had a sweet side to him, and if you've ever talked to somebody and they have a story they like to tell, and they have a glint in their eye, and you enjoy hearing the story over and over. My grandma Hagen was in the home here in town, and we would pick her up for holidays and whatnot, and we'd take her back in the evening. Well, you'd get to pass by some of the residents, and one of them was an elderly man who was in a wheelchair in the hallway, and he had a pipe. They allowed him to have his pipe, and they allowed him to have tobacco in it just for the smell, and he would just go up down the hallway, and he was kind of like an old sea captain, and we would talk to him, and he'd nod and smile very friendly. And John one day had dropped Grandma off after Christmas and was talking to him, and he goes, Norman, how would you like a light for that pipe? Well, John always carried his Zippo lighter. Anybody that knows John knows he likes Zippo lighter and keys and things like that. So he got this out, and anybody familiar with Zippos? Familiar with that song? sound. I see the eyes glazing over of older people in here that remember smoking. So John, he takes it out, lights that man's pipe, and he just had a beam of a smile, and John just smiled as much, that small thing that he did made that man so happy. It was his Christmas present, and John's walking down and, here's somebody, Norman! How do you like that pipe? He loved it, and that was the sweet side of it. It was watching John tell that story and the smile on his face, which to me was the essence of John. Thanks.
I think I'm going to go the casual route too, Eric. Until I get warmed up anyway. I'm Aaron Sight for Bush. John was my brother for 20 years. I'm not going to call him my brother-in-law because he's my brother. And miss him? It's funny. Today is really, sorry, I'm not talking. Thanks, Mark. Today I'm soaking up all of this because he's really touched all of us. And like Eric said, he's had a real compassionate, joyful side. He had his own special relationship with all of us. He's a unique way. I've seen the glint in his eye too when he's buying Christmas presents for the kid, all his nieces and nephews, and or maybe it's nieces and nephew. I'm not sure what it is. I'm losing track here, but John, known him for 20 years, and it was really relevant. And when Martha and I got married, to have some new brothers, it really touched me. One time we went out on the river, and John had some trouble swimming, and he was tired swimming, and I ended up pulling him out of the water, and Eric, and it was a combo effort by a few of us, but we pulled him out of the water and on the beach, but John and I we'd sit over on our back porch at the homestead and talk about that, and he goes, like, whatever happens, good or bad, is your fault.